In the heart of New York, an old man still sets 2 cups of coffee every morning. One for himself, and one for the love he lost, broken heart. The morning sun touched the glass windows of a small apartment in Brooklyn. Inside, an old man named Henry Miller sat quietly beside the window, staring at the empty chair across from him. That chair once belonged to his wife, Mary. Every morning, she would sit there with a cup of coffee, laughing about small things. But 2 winters ago, cancer took her away. Since then, the chair had remained empty, yet Henry still made 2 cups of coffee every morning, one for himself, and one for her. He talked to her picture as if she still listened, as if the walls still remembered her voice. That evening, the streets of Brooklyn were painted in orange light. Henry walked slowly, his old coat buttoned tight against the cold wind. He passed by the same coffee shop where he and Mary used to sit every Sunday. The waitress, Emma, recognized him and waved gently. "Good evening, Mr. Miller," she said softly. "The usual table?" Henry smiled faintly. "Not today, dear, not today." He continued walking until he reached the park, the one where Mary used to feed the pigeons. The benches were empty, the air smelled of wet leaves, and the sound of children playing echoed far away. Henry sat down on their old bench, pulling out a small photo from his wallet. It was Mary, smiling, holding a sunflower in her hand. "You remember this park, don't you?" he whispered to the photo. A tear rolled down his cheek, but there was warmth in his eyes, like the sun hadn't completely left him. Suddenly, a young boy came running toward him, holding a paper airplane. The plane landed near Henry's shoe. The boy laughed. "Sorry, sir." Henry picked it up, smiling. "It's all right, young man. You made it fly pretty far." "Thanks," the boy said, then noticed the photo in Henry's hand. "Is that your wife?" Henry nodded slowly. "Yes, she loved the park. Used to say the pigeons were her friends." The boy sat beside him without asking, and for a moment, silence filled the air, the kind that comforts. "You miss her?" the boy finally asked. Henry smiled with glistening eyes. "Every day, son. But missing her also means she's still here, somehow." That night, Henry returned home as the city lights blinked like fallen stars across Brooklyn. The apartment was quiet, only the ticking of the clock filled the air. He hung his coat, made a cup of tea, and walked toward the window where the empty chair waited. On the table lay an envelope he hadn't noticed before. His neighbor, Mrs. Clark, must have slipped it under the door. The envelope had an old logo, St. Mary's Children's Home. With trembling hands, Henry opened it. Inside was a letter from the orphanage's director. It read, "Mr. Miller, your wife, before she passed, donated funds to build a small reading room for our children. We've just finished it, and named it Mary's Corner. We'd love for you to visit." Henry's hands trembled. His eyes filled again, but this time, they weren't tears of loss, they were tears of love that still lived. The next morning, Henry dressed neatly, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite. When he reached St. Mary's, children ran around laughing. The director led him to a small, warm room filled with books and tiny chairs. On the wall hung a sign in gold letters, Mary's Corner. Henry walked inside, touched one of the books, and smiled softly. A little girl tugged at his sleeve, holding a crayon drawing of a sunflower. "It's for you, Grandpa," she said shyly. Henry knelt, his eyes glistening again. "Thank you, sweetheart, she would have loved this." The children gathered around him, laughing, asking him to read a story. For the first time in years, Henry's voice filled the room with warmth. Outside the window, sunlight fell on his face, and the empty chair at home was no longer empty in his heart. Henry looked up, whispering to the sky. "You did it, Mary." They're smiling. And for the first time in a long while, he smiled too.